My brother borrowed $30,000 from me. Then I found out I was actually funding his criminal lifestyle, which made me call the FBI. I, 32M, used to think my brother's money problems were just poor financial management. He's always been the free spirit of the family. Charming, likable, but never quite holding down a steady job. For years, he'd come to me with stories about opportunities that just needed a little cash to get off the ground. A small business loan here, help with rent there. Our parents passed away when we were in our 20s, and as the older sibling with a stable career in accounting, I felt responsible for him. It started with small amounts 5 years ago. $200 for car repairs. $500 for first month's rent on a new apartment after a bad breakup. The amounts steadily grew, as did the elaborate stories explaining why he needed the money. I'd be lying if I said I kept perfect track, but my conservative estimate puts it around $30,000 over the years. He'd pay back small amounts occasionally, just enough to make it seem like he was trying. My wife had been suspicious for years. He's taking advantage of you, she'd say. I'd defend him, he's family. He's just going through a rough patch. The rough patch had lasted half a decade. 3 months ago, I finally put my foot down. My brother needed $5,000 for what he claimed was a medical bill. My wife and I had just put a down payment on our first house, and our savings were stretched thin. I told him I couldn't help this time. The reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of understanding, he became angry, almost panicked. You don't understand. I need this money. It's important. When I held firm, he stormed out of my house, slamming the door behind him. 2 weeks passed without contact, the longest we'd gone without speaking since our parents died. I was worried and decided to drive to his apartment to check on him. He'd given me a spare key years ago when he was going through a depressive episode, and I still had it. His apartment was empty when I arrived. Not vacant, just unoccupied at that moment. What struck me immediately was how much nicer it was than I remembered. New furniture, a massive TV, expensive artwork on the walls. This didn't look like the home of someone constantly borrowing money to make ends meet. I shouldn't have snooped. I know that. But something felt off. In his home office, I found financial documents scattered across his desk. Bank statements showing regular deposits of $8,000 to $12,000 cash every month. A notebook with cryptic entries, names, amounts, dates. And most concerning, a stack of what appeared to be fake IDs with my brother's photo, but different names. I took photos of everything with my phone, my hands shaking. As I was about to leave, I heard keys in the door. I slipped out through the patio door and circled around to my car, heart pounding. Back home, I spent hours researching. The pattern was clear. My brother wasn't struggling financially. He was running some kind of scam. The regular cash deposits, the multiple identities, the careful accounting of clients. I couldn't deny the evidence in front of me. I agonized over what to do for 3 days. On one hand, this was my brother, my only remaining close family. On the other, whatever he was involved in was clearly illegal and potentially hurting people. The final straw came when I overheard him on the phone at a family dinner, speaking to someone about getting their grandmother's savings and how it was an easy mark. That night, I called the FBI's financial crimes hotline. The agent listened carefully as I detailed what I'd found, including the photos I'd taken. They asked me to come in for a formal statement the next day. The investigation moved quickly after that. Within 2 weeks, my brother was arrested. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. He'd been running a sophisticated scheme targeting elderly people, convincing them to invest in non-existent business opportunities. The borrowed money from me had likely been used to maintain appearances while he was setting up his operation. Once it was running smoothly, he kept asking for money to maintain our relationship dynamic, keeping me feeling needed while he actually lived quite comfortably off his victims. I testified against my brother at his trial 6 months later. Looking into his eyes across the courtroom, I saw no remorse, only anger at being caught. The prosecutor showed that he'd stolen over $1.5 million from dozens of elderly victims over 3 years. Some had lost their life savings. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. As they led him away, he looked directly at me and said, "You chose strangers over your own blood." Maybe I did. But those strangers were people's parents and grandparents who trusted him. People who lost their retirement funds and ended up dependent on their children or the state. Real people with real lives he damaged irreparably. The aftermath has been difficult. Some family members think I betrayed him. Others understand but keep their distance, unsure what to make of the situation. My wife has been my rock through it all, reassuring me I made the right choice. I visit my brother in prison every few months. Our conversations are strained, but I keep going. Sometimes I wonder if he used me as practice, perfecting his manipulation tactics on me before deploying them on his victims. Other times, I wonder if there was a moment when I could have intervened differently and changed his path. The prosecutor told me they recovered about 30% of the stolen funds. It's something, but not enough to undo the damage. I've set up a small foundation with my portion of our parents' inheritance to provide emergency financial assistance to elder fraud victims. It feels inadequate, but it's something. Sometimes I lie awake thinking about all the red flags I missed. The inconsistent stories. The perpetual crises that always required exact amounts of money. The mysterious business trips that never resulted in actual income. I was the accountant, the one who should have seen the numbers didn't add up. The hardest part isn't the family tension or the guilt. It's accepting that the brother I thought I knew never really existed. The person I defended and supported for years was a facade hiding someone capable of calculated, heartless deception. I don't regret making the call, but I do regret waiting so long to see what was right in front of me. If there's anything others can learn from my experience, it's that sometimes the hardest truth to accept is the one about the people closest to us. And that doing the right thing rarely feels good, even when it's necessary. When people ask about my brother now, I usually say he's away for a while. It's easier than explaining that my only sibling is serving time for defrauding elderly people out of their life savings. Easier than admitting I was the one who put him there. But at night, when I check our locks before bed, a new habit I've developed since this all happened, I remind myself that some secrets shouldn't be kept. Some burdens shouldn't be carried alone. And sometimes, the most important choice we make isn't between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of wrong, hoping to find the path that does the least harm. I still have the last check my brother gave me, supposedly paying back a small portion of what he borrowed. I never cashed it. I keep it as a reminder that some debts can never truly be repaid.